Hi, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
Good, good. It's been a while since we've had a chance to chat and catch up. Um, I thought, being that it's the beginning of a school year and kind of the beginning of a new period, hopefully post-COVID,
Right.
that we could talk a little bit about some of the books that Hudson Music is distributing digitally that you did while you were under your tutelage with Alfred. And let's start with uh, kind of a little background on how you got started working for Alfred.
Well, I graduated from Cal State Northridge in 1981, and then I played on the road for many, many years and was kind of getting tired of being on the road and had already been writing jazz band charts and stuff and wanted to do more of that. And I wanted to be in town, um, more often than out. And uh, somebody had told me that Jay Wanamaker was vacating a position at Alfred. Applied for it was in the marketing department, this particular position, and I knew I didn't want to be in marketing, but I knew that once I had my foot in the door, I could kind of finagle my way through the editorial area in which I wanted to be. And I knew Sandy because long before I even worked at Alfred, which I started in May of 1985, Alfred published my first jazz band publication. It was a chart that I had written for Louie Bellson's trombone player named Nick DeMeo, who had died of cancer, and wrote this tune, and Louie's band played it a few times and stuff. And he came into the office to meet with Sandy Feldstein and John O'Reilly and myself. And we brought the chart in and he said, "Hey, this is a chart, this young man has written. I think it's really good. My band is playing it. Would you consider publishing it?" And that's how it all started. That's how I first met Sandy and John O'Reilly, through that connection. So I applied for the marketing position in 1985 and I got the position. And the funny thing is that probably 2 or 3 months after I started at Alfred, Sandy came to me and he said, "We have this brush book that we've kind of accepted from Louie, and we have some of the music engraved, but it really doesn't have much direction and we can't really pull it together and stuff. Would you mind taking a look at it and seeing if there's anything that you can do with it?" And I did. The music was fine, but there wasn't any kind of way to diagram the brushes in a way that made logical sense. So I took a look at it and I came up with the time clock, the hands of the clock concept or whatever, so that you could say, start at the 12th position and switch to this. And, kind of helped put the book together in terms of making it logical, a logical way to approach it all the way through. And then I added the Latin brush section and the special effects section. And the three of us, Louie Bellson, Hank Bellson, and myself, split the royalties and the credits evenly. And that was my very first book, for Alfred or anywhere. And Sandy, I guess, was pretty happy with what I had done with that. And so probably in 1986, we were talking one day and he said, the Haskell Harp book is the biggest selling, drum book around, and it's been around for years. And he had he had been thinking of a way to try and update that book and take it off the market. And he asked me if I'd be interested in co-writing it with him. And I said, sure. So that's how that started. That's how we started with that book.
Mm. And that was the Drum Method Book One.
That was Alfred's Drum Method Book One.
And I believe it came out in August of 1987.
That's correct.
I was still very, very young.
Me too.
So how many copies of that book have been sold?
As of and I just got my royalty statement because Alfred's royalty statement goes from April 1st to March 31st. And then we get the statements in August. So I just got my statement this month. And that book has sold, book one has sold a total of 700,000 copies.
Wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is. At its peak, it was in 2005. It reached its peak by selling 32,000 copies in a single year.
wow. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously to get a book, to get those kind of numbers, a lot of wheels have to be turning in simultaneously with each other, between
Yes.
marketing, sales, promotion, printing, making sure you have the inventory. I mean,
Right.
people don't realize what goes into a successful book like that, just keeping up with it.
You're right. And the thing is that we sat down and did a lot of legwork first, rather than just sitting down and writing a book or whatever. We got every book that was out there, looked at what it had and what it didn't have. Then we set up kind of a study group or a group of teachers that we knew or whatever that we could kind of get their feedback from. So it started with that core group and us asking, if there was a new drum book that came out or whatever, what would you like to see in it that is not included in anything else that's on the market? And so we took those ideas and included them. And then as we completed sections, we gave those sections to that core group or whatever to look at, to comment, what do you like about it? What don't you like? What would you add? What would you not add? And so once that happened, we knew once we had a finished product, it was pretty solid. But I think you mentioned marketing. I think the marketing campaign was probably the biggest in, publishing drum history at that time. And I have to thank, Sandy and Morty Manis for, allowing us to do that kind of marketing. What we did is we came out with a 4-color flyer, and we contacted all the music dealers around the country and the world and said, if you supply us with the names of the drum teachers that teach either in your stores or in your area schools, we will send them a free copy of Alfred's Drum Method Book 1 with your compliments. Well, of course, we sent them a form that had, places for them to list drummers and stuff. And we got thousands of drummer names or whatever, teachers in every state and all those areas. And we sent them a free copy of Book 1.
Wow. How many would you say you gave out at that point for no charge?
Several, probably 10,000.
Wow.
7,000, 6,000, something,
wow,
something like that.
That's a big commitment.
And that was that first one. And we continued to do that every few years, as a new generation of teachers came, like every 10 years, every 8 years, we would run that same thing and ask music stores or teachers in their area schools if they wanted a free copy, and we'd give it to them with the compliments of that music store. And that's what really, really set it off in motion. And I credit the promotion idea of that or whatever, because as you know, it's all about getting it into a teacher's hand, right, and having them look at it. And it's very costly to do that. So unless you're a major publishing company and you have the means to give out that many books and stuff, it just doesn't happen.
Well, knowing Sandy the way I do, also from having worked with them after you did for a number of years, many years, that promotion has his name, kind of all over it.
Exactly. He was a master at that.
Yeah, I learned a lot about marketing, and from him, absolutely.
And then when it came to Book 2, we had all those teachers who had gotten a free book, of book one or whatever, who we then asked, okay, now that you've looked at book one, what kinds of things would you like to see in book two? And book two was basically created based on a lot of the ideas that they came back with, like, multiple percussion techniques and, different sounds on the snare drum kind of thing. And all those kinds of things came from the teachers who were teaching out of book one. And that's how book two came about.
Mm. And so the kind of genesis then of the drum set method, which was, I guess, kind of the third book almost in the series, is that right?
Yes.
What was kind of the goal of having a third book like that?
Well, the goal was to be able, again, to give somebody who is starting out on snare drum or whatever the opportunity to move over to drum set if they wanted to. As you well know, I mean, most of us started off on snare drum in school band or privately, at least in my generation, most of us didn't just start off on drum set. You kind of started with the snare drum first and, went into drum set and played them concurrently. So the goal was, the same kind of concept, the same kind of research and stuff, but it was just an extension of, okay, now you're a good snare drum player, whatever. Now, if you'd like to play drum set, we're offering a method that's similar in teaching concept as book one and book two of the snare drum books.
I would have to imagine that between the three drum books, the book one, book two, and the drum set, you're probably in the area of 1 million plus units, which is absolutely unbelievable. And I don't know if people can grasp, that number, but I don't know what the numbers are like on the Stone or the Wilcoxon or Ted Reed, some of the real classics that have been out, since the 50s or 60s.
Right.
I'm sure they're very, very big numbers, but what you created with Sandy is absolutely right in there, and hats off. I mean, it's kind of a modern miracle.
Yeah, in a way, you're right. I mean, it's just, you can't predict those kinds of things. We've both been in the business for a long time, and every book that we look at or that we decide to publish, we think it's a good book and we think it's going to do well. Otherwise, we wouldn't do it. So, right. But you never know. It's just, it's a combination of everything. The type of book, the timing, all those things have to come together at the right time in order for it to really work.
Right. And, when I started to work with Sandy, the stuff we were doing with my first publishing company, DCM Music Video and Manhattan Music, they were kind of higher end books. And what Sandy really explained to me was the pyramid,
Right.
The biggest base and the biggest sales potential and the most people that you're going to reach is always at the beginner level.
Right.
And, so I got that, and you're a living testament to the.
And I would say that goes across all musical lines. I mean,
right.
I think Alfred's Basic Guitar Method Book One has sold 13 million copies, and it came out in the 50s or 60s. And of course, Alfred's Basic Piano Method Book One has sold millions too. So yeah, the logic is that everybody kind of starts out, they want to try music, see if it's what they want to do. And so they all go through a beginning book, and then some of them continue on, but a lot of them decide that they don't want to continue studying. So book ones, if you're going to write something, try and write something at the beginning level, because the sales will be far greater than an intermediate or an advanced book.
So how many books have you authored, Dave? Too many to count.
Probably, well, at least 150.
Oh, wow.
Because you're talking about, and that's not just books, that's probably 60 or more jazz band and concert band publications. And then with books, there's probably, at least 120 or so, which includes, book 1 and 2 of a major band method.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I've been quite fortunate.
Congratulations. I mean,
thank you.
It's an incredible quantity and quality and achievement. It really is.
I appreciate that, especially coming from somebody like you.
Well, I don't know many people that can tout a track record like that.
Well, thank you.
Maybe Michael Jordan and Joe DiMaggio and that and 400. Doesn't happen every day. So it's wonderful. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
On a career well served.
Thank you.
So we also distribute, through Hudson Digital, and we've been fortunate enough to have Alfred agree to let us sell certain books digitally that we felt through Hudson we could do a good job with. The Peter Erskine books, which I love. How did those come about? Working with Peter.
Well, Peter and I have, as you know, have been friends for a very long time, and when I became the editor-in-chief and the drum editor when Sandy left, my job was to kind of look at the drum catalog, what we had and where I wanted to see it go. And one of the things that I wanted to do is I wanted to approach Peter with writing a drum set method of his own, which he did. And I remember John O'Reilly and I going to his house and discussing the possibility of that and what he would do differently than what's out there and stuff. And that's how it all started. And then he kind of became our regular publisher for all the other, books that he did. And one of the books he wanted to do, a few years ago was a book called, hacks and tips and tricks and stuff like that for drummers who, are on the road or just need a reference kind of thing. And when he started talking to me about it, I said, gee, that's funny because I have a list of things like that as well that I've always thought, well, gee, if I were to include this, like on, how to get a gig, how to sign a contract, what to do in this situation, how to approach this, how, blah, 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 blah. I said, maybe we could combine the two or whatever and come up with a really comprehensive book. And he thought it was a great idea and said, I'd love to write a book with you and stuff. And that's what the first book was, The Drummer's Lifeline, which was basically obviously drum specific with some general music ideas and factoids and stuff that applied to others aside from just being drummers. And when the response to that book came out and the sales were actually pretty good as well, I approached him and I said, this is just, for drummers or whatever, but we have a whole list of instruments out there and musicians who could benefit from something like this. Why don't we follow up with a book called The Musician's Lifeline? And we can write the bulk of it, but we can also ask some of the biggest names that both of us know or whatever to contribute to that book, which would give it a little bit more meat and character and substance. And he thought that was a great idea. So we pulled our list together, and I think we reached out to almost 200 people, wow. Every big name that you could possibly imagine. And we had 5 to 7 specific questions for them. What would you do differently if you started over? Would you do the same instrument? How do you practice? All these kinds of things. So they all answered the same question and sent them in. And then we picked and choose the ones, got rid of the duplicate kind of answers and stuff and kept the ones that we felt were the strongest answers of all those people in all those categories. And I think out of over 150 people, we used 150 of those quotes to some degree or another. And of course, that went over well because now that you had, all these top-notch musicians and big names or whatever that were part of that book, they all helped promote it as well. They put it on their Facebook page. They promoted it. We were able to use quotes of theirs or whatever in the promotional material and online. And so it was, both those books were quite successful as a result of just the support we had from, all these players. And most of those, or a lot of those, were people, that Peter had worked with over the years and stuff. And they were more than happy to contribute to that.
Yeah, they're great books.
Thank you.
For anyone who hasn't seen them, they're really terrific books. So the musician's Lifeline and the drummer's Lifeline. I mean, I think they're great.
Thank you.
Just one or two last questions, and I'll let you go. I know obviously of your very long term, and you touched on at the beginning your relationship with Louie Bellson. Mm-hmm. Talk about just a brief kind of how did the Louie's poetry book that Houghton has published, both physically and digitally, how did that come about? We never really had a chance to talk about that.
Yeah, that came about as a result of me just, hanging out with him so much, whatever, because I lived in the San Fernando Valley. When he was in town, he lived in Northridge when I first came to Cal State Northridge in 1977 and then moved. But when he came in town, he stayed with his brother, Hank Bellson, who lived in the San Fernando Valley. And so we would always get together. We were always working on other projects because we had our own jazz band series with Barnhouse. And, we'd always talk about a variety of things or whatever. And I just, I don't know, one day I was asking, what else do you like to do? Or was there anything that you like to do other than playing drums or writing music and stuff? I mean, was there anything as a kid? And he said there was two things. One was drawing and the other was writing poetry. And the poetry, I knew about the drawing thing because that's how he sketched the double bass drum kit that he eventually innovated. And that was in a high school art class that came about. But the poetry thing, when he said that, I thought, oh, wow, that's really interesting because I would have never thought that. And I asked him one time, we were at home just kind of hanging out, and I said, do you have any examples of your poetry and stuff that I'd love to be able to read them and stuff? And he had some Xerox copies of 2 volumes that he had. And I took them home and I read them, and I was really quite impressed because some of them were very introspective and deep, and some of them were funny, and some of them, everybody could kind of relate to. Some you had to be, a musician to understand who it was written about. And I thought, well, what did you ever do with these books? He says, really nothing. I just kind of do it for my own pleasure. And, if somebody asks for one, I'll give it to them, or I'll give it as a gift or whatever. But they weren't very presentable because they were Xerox and they were done on a typewriter. And I said, we could take both of these books and condense them into one and really do a great job through my resources at Alfred. And so we picked the ones that we felt would be commercially viable. We redid the cover, we had it copy edited and typeset by the engravers at Alfred, and then had it printed at Vic's in New York. And that's how that started. And there was, of course, a lot of interest, and he continued to use them as gifts and stuff. And, when you and I talked about, wanting, is there anything that, we could add to the Houghton catalog, with Louie's name on it, I had mentioned that book, and you were equally surprised because you didn't know anything about it. And you thought, what a great idea is a gift, or to be able to offer something that probably nobody knew Louie did.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful for the fact that you were interested in it, that you were really excited about it, and that you did it, because it turned out beautifully. I mean, I have it here, a matter of fact. So
There you go. Looks
yes.
good. Yeah, I mean,
So
once you mentioned the idea to me, and Louie being Louie, and I'm just, was so crazy for him, and anything to help keep his name alive, let people know about another side of him. I think it's been just wonderful.
yeah, well, thank you again for the opportunity. I'm sure he's smiling up in
Yeah,
the place.
hopefully,
He
hopefully.
says my boys are taking good care of me while I'm not on the physical planet.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Hopefully he's happy with it. But yeah, it came out great, and
yeah,
I'm really happy we did it. It's not going to sell 700,000 copies, but I'm real proud of it, and the fact that we did it and it's in the catalog is
and
great.
I am too. And the fact that it just kind of gives you a window into his soul and what
Yes,
was important to him. And of course, anybody who knows Louis personally is not surprised when they read some of those writings in that book, whatever, because he was such a warm, loving, giving, and gracious person that I think his writing reflects that as well.
absolutely. I always said Louis was a saint among men.
He was,
You know.
without question.
Yeah, yeah. Let's just two more questions.
Okay.
Have you had a chance, to check out the Houghton digital player and kind of the platform? And do you have any thoughts on it?
I think it's great. I think digital is where it's all going. We all know that print publishing and print book sales will continue to decline, and so I think what Hudson has done with the digital catalog, Alfred, and your own works, it is remarkable. I appreciated so much when I was still at Alfred, you taking that on, but you've made it really easy, to purchase those things digitally, to have all the interactive stuff up and available for folks to look at, and it's all very reasonably priced. And you do a great job of marketing it, adding new material, and just keeping it going. I love to get all the marketing stuff with, the bundles, create your own bundle, and you can mix and match and stuff like that. That's really impressive.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know, because we weren't really in the digital part of that, and before I left or whatever. I don't know how the digital sales compare in the drum catalog market as they do in the print publishing, but I would assume that it'll continue to grow.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately or unfortunately, I mean, I think COVID kind of jump started it for a lot of people because they didn't want to go into stores. Stores were closed,
Yep, I agree.
So it got us out there, and thankfully I had started several years prior to COVID, so that we had a catalog, and I think
And a system in place to be able to do it.
Yeah, yeah, and it provided, I think, I don't want to use the word distraction in a negative way, but it gave people something to do while they were stuck home for months at a time and no gigs, and all of that stuff that we know about. So it was a good thing. Last question, Dave. Being as experienced in the publishing world on so many different facets of it, I get a lot of people that ask, how do I write a book? How do I get started? What advice would you pass along to drummers or musicians out there that want to, get started trying to write a book? What would you say?
Well, I would say, I mean, I will start with saying there's a lot of material out there. We all know that, but that doesn't mean that there's not room to add more material. But I think the biggest thing that people should do, and this is the advice I gave people for years and years, is, if you think you have a great idea, look out on the marketplace and see if it's already been done before. And if it has, what makes your book or whatever it is that you're doing different than what's already out there. That's what's going to make the difference. If you're going to write a beginning snare drum book, whatever, you better, do the research and see what's out there, and then find a way to make yours different by adding something, a different approach, whether it's, a DVD, because that's the way it all started, as you know, that we went from books to books and cassettes, and then books and, CDs, and then it was DVDs. And so it kept advancing to, a medium where people wanted to rebuy things or repackage things or write things in order to be able to include that kind of media and sound benefit to go along with teaching. So I think that there's always room for new books. I think publishers probably are less reluctant to publish more of the common drum set books, snare drum books, etc. But I would encourage people to self-publish them. I mean, we're at a point now digitally and technologically where you can set up your own store, you can sell your own PDFs and stuff like that. And my suggestion is to try and start that way first and then approach a major publisher. Because when I was at Alfred, if somebody had approached me and said, look, I've self-published this, I'm kind of, tired of, running, the marketing, the shipping, the printing part of the business and stuff. I want to know if you're interested in taking it on. I would be much more likely to look at it or take it if they said, well, over the last 2 years, I've sold 5,000 copies of it. Well, that lets me know, first of all, that there's a market, that it's already got some kind of stronghold out there, whatever. So, and you've got somebody who's actively promoting it. The other advice I would give that's along the publishing lines is, rather than a publisher taking a book and saying, I want to publish this, you might have a better chance of having a major publisher distribute it than publish it. And the reasons why. A publisher, if they take it on as their publication, they have to pay for all the costs, the marketing, the cost of printing, the cost of editing and engraving, and so on. And so they're hesitant to take on, that kind of expense for something or someone that is an unknown. If they want to distribute the book, then, the author is responsible for the printing costs and everything else. And the publisher puts it in their catalog and takes it to all the trade shows and stuff and takes a percentage of that. There's less risk for the publisher at that point. And the author gets the benefit of having it in a major publisher's catalog and being seen at PASIC or NAMM or Midwest or any of the major conventions.
And a larger share of the money that comes in, obviously, because
absolutely, because they can continue to sell it on their own,
right?
As well as having, somebody like Houghton or Alfred or Houghton distribute it.
Right.
So I would start with that first. It's less risky for a publisher, and then if a publisher sees that it's doing well and so on, then you can always go back around and see if they're interested in taking it over fully.
Right.
But that would be my suggestion.
Great advice, Dave Black.
Thank you.
Dave, thank you. I've kept you longer than we thought, but and we've only touched on the tip of the iceberg. We have probably 140 more publications to talk about on another day.
Well, let's not put either the audience or you or I to sleep.
But thank you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations. I'm thrilled that we get to do a little bit of work together, and hopefully there'll be some more things coming down the line. And, I
appreciate that. I've appreciated your friendship, your support, and, doing business with you for many, many years. And you're one of the great guys in the business. So
thank you. Likewise.
for everything that you've done to help support my career.
Thanks. And what you've done for drummers and the music world at large. So
Well,
thanks.
thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. We'll talk soon.
Okay, good talking with you. Thank you.
All right. Take care. Until next time.